Welcome to Storytelling with Lindsay Bednar.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited we're finally connecting.
I know. I feel like I've pushed this off for a very long time. I was trying to figure out when you first asked me, and I think it's been about a year.
Well, I'm persistent, so I'm appreciative. I know you're wildly busy, and carving out time as a mom is never easy. So I'm so grateful.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being persistent. Honestly, this needs to be shared, and that's where my heart is just needs to help those moms out there.
Absolutely. I was also trying to remember how I first came across you and your account and what you're up to. And I'm pretty sure it was when I had Meg Rogney on the podcast, and who's amazing. And that was also a powerful episode. And you and I connected. And one of your posts that I just want to read the first part of it because it sets up what we're going to be talking about today. And it just grabbed me. And as soon as I read it, I was like, I have to connect with this woman. It says, my why has always been for my babies and also to help spare other babies what we have been through, to give them a better life, future, and to leave a legacy to carry on for the next generations. Many of you don't know what the pivotal moment over a decade ago now in our parenthood journey that brought us to our knees and left us clinging to Jesus for a miracle for our son. It's been over a decade now that our entire world was flipped upside down. Our beautiful, all natural, zero meds birthed little boy was all of a sudden paralyzed and bedridden overnight. Like most parents, we trusted our brilliant pediatrician who left us heartbroken with a little boy that we were told might never walk again. Cue the mama and papa bear fierce love and commitment to our son. All hands on deck, we dug deep to figure out what happened to our completely healthy child left paralyzed. It didn't make sense, and we weren't about to let him be another statistic. Oh, yeah, that's powerful. I can imagine, like most people in your journey, there is a before and an after. I would love us to start with before and what life looked like before tragedy struck.
So I was gathering my thoughts prior to this call, and I was trying to not get emotional. It's been 11 and a half years, so it's crazy that it still gets me. Prior to Braden's diagnosis, I was just your normal mom. I knew enough that I wanted to birth my children all natural, no meds, to the best of my ability, which we succeeded with my first two. And then my third child was actually, I had complete placenta previa. And so I actually had an emergency C-section with her. So she did not get that opportunity. However, I honestly believe God used Braden, and my middle also had adverse reactions, which we didn't connect until after Braden had actually made a full recovery. And a lot of people ask me, how did you not know? Or, what was the pivotal turn for you? How did you not know when he was admitted to the hospital within 48 hours after having had this quote unquote booster that he needed for his kindergarten year? And I trusted my doctor. I was raised where you don't question, you just trust your doctors. And, they're the ones that are educated, and you lean into that. You lean into their expertise and to their knowledge and their wisdom. And that really rocked my world. And Braden has been a huge pivotal turn in not just medical corruption, but also it's snowballed. Once you start going down the rabbit hole of medical corruption, it just, opens up doors and
Mhm.
has you doing going down all sorts of rabbit holes. Um, and Braden was a healthy, totally normal child. And I had no medications to birth him. I did follow like loosely the medical requirements to, for their well checks. I had read Dr. Sears' book prior to having my children. So I knew they weren't necessarily all bad, is what I was understanding, and that it'd be best to space them out. No, now knowing what I know, I would have never touched them. However, I do feel like our journey is our story, and I'm so grateful because he's actually completely fine and thriving now, 11 and a half years later. Um, but his journey was, it rocked our world. He was a completely normal boy, did train jujitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He started at the age of 4. He was 6 when this all started. So 6, it was August of his, when he had just turned 6, June, a couple months prior. And he was getting ready to go to his first, real school. He had gone to preschool before and real school, kindergarten year. And he was so excited about it. And he missed almost the first 7 weeks of that session, that first kickoff to kindergarten year. Um, he was admitted immediately to, well, so I'm going to just give you a little snapshot of what happened. So
Yeah.
he had his well check on, it was like right before we were headed out of town. It was on that Friday. And it was happened to also be my husband's birthday. So we headed to the beach just for a couple nights to enjoy some family time and celebrations with the family. And we got back into town that Sunday. And when we got back into town, Braden could not get out of the car. And leading up to that, he was fine leading up to his appointment and hadn't noticed anything much during the, because this was Friday to Sunday, so a couple days difference. And we got home and my middle girl, who at the time would have been 4, and she runs in saying, Braden can't get out of the car, he can't stand up. And we were shocked. We didn't know it was so blindsided us. And so we run out, and Braden had finally gotten out where he was enough, like we had a minivan at the time, and he was holding, like standing alongside the minivan, kind of just like trying to get his footings, and he could not stand on his own. And so we got him in the house. My husband carried him. We had a 2-story house at the time. He carried him inside the house up to his bedroom. And we talked to our pediatrician, who we got in immediately on Monday morning to go see him. And they sent us right to the ER because they didn't know what was wrong. There was no fever accompanying it. There was no pain accompanying it. So it was very bizarre, very all of a sudden. And at the ER, they actually wanted to do a spinal tap because they thought he had meningitis. And I am so grateful that God gave me the discernment to know that you do not mess with a spinal tap. And I knew that he did not have any symptoms of meningitis, but I also wasn't super informed on what a spinal tap could do. I just knew you didn't mess with that. And so I really just held strong to, I do not believe he has meningitis. He has no symptoms. He has no fever. He has no neck pain. He had literally nothing that stood out that accompanied a meningitis symptom or diagnosis. And they respected that, thankfully. And they agreed to not do the spinal tap, which to this day, I'm so grateful I had that discernment because several naturopaths since have told me, had we gotten the spinal tap in the condition he was at, he probably would have been permanently paralyzed. So just, again, very grateful I had the discernment for that. They did want to do an MRI to rule out a brain tumor. So I did agree to that because that was huge to me to make sure that that was ruled out. I know, again, you don't want to mess with an MRI either. And everything came back clean, totally fine. Then they admitted him to the hospital, to Children's Ward, and he was in there for 5 days. He could not get up, he could not walk. And my husband and I saw him becoming a vegetable. We, traded shifts during the day. So one of us was there 24/7. So we were just shifting our schedules. We had a little newborn at home at the time. We also had, or not newborn, she was almost 1, but we also had Elise, who was 4. So 2 kids at home, no family in the area. And so we were just like juggling our schedules to the best of our ability to have someone there always 24/7 with him. And we just saw this healthy boy slowly become a vegetable. Like he just was becoming really comfortable. And the doctors did not have any diagnosis for him still. They kept picking and prodding and guessing. And it was just like an experiment. Nobody knew what had happened at all. They had subscribed him or prescribed him steroids. And that was just like throwing spaghetti to the wall, see if it stuck, see if anything happened. In the midst of that prescription, thankfully, I was reading the instructions and the amount that was supposed to be given to him. And they had actually doubled, if not, I think even tripled what was actually supposed to be given to Braden. So thankfully we caught that and the pharmacist suggested it. But I was thinking like, man, who is checking this stuff? Things are getting missed left and right. And if my husband and I weren't there helping, I don't know what would have gone wrong. It was like we were really like his only advocate fighting for him. And I felt like the hospital staff was doing to the best of their ability. Our doctor was, I feel like trying to figure out what was going on, but it was nobody had answers. So finally, day 5, my husband and I just met with the staff, met with the doctors, and we just said, he's not making any progress here. At this point, he was just becoming so comfortable. He was so terrified to leave the hospital because he didn't know what was going on. He's only 6 years old. And so a lot of fear, a lot of just not wanting to be out of the hospital for fear of not knowing. Nobody knew what was going on. So his little head was spinning and getting comfortable. And we never saw an out. We were just like, we're just going to, I guess, spend forever here. So we just kept praying about it, met with the doctors, and we just said, can we please just have an opportunity to do this at home? We had been there for 5 days at this point. We had watched what they had been able to do. They were actually feeding him via IVs because he wasn't able to keep food down at the time. So that was the only thing we were going to be really, cautious of at home to make sure we could still get fluids in him and keep food in his belly. And they did agree. So we got him home. We had set up his home, his little bedroom as a hospital room. He could not get up and walk, so he actually had to have a bedpan in his bedroom, which is just, yeah, rocks any mom, like seeing a kid that you're used to seeing being very active, trained jujitsu, and, was playing soccer at the time, and all the things. And so then we just bunkered down and we just did what any mom and dad would do, just tried to pour into our son and get him healthy, and nothing was working. In the meantime, we were still meeting with our pediatrician on and off, just checking in, seeing what we needed to do. And it wasn't until around his 3-week appointment that our pediatrician said, Becca, you might have to consider homeschooling. You might never do jujitsu again. He might never walk again, was what the bottom line was. And that's when it really struck me, like nobody has a clue what's going on. Nobody has any information to provide to us of how to help him. There's no diagnosis still at this point, no protocol. And we are watching our son, like we're vertically challenged. We're not very big people. And we are watching this little boy, 6 years old, just start to deteriorate. He was starting to lose weight. He was starting to go down in pant size. I think all said and done, the whole 7 weeks, he'd lost about 10 pounds and went down a couple pant sizes. So for a 6 year old, any 6 year old, that's a lot of weight. And that's a lot for a child to lose. And so that's when the Mama Bear in Me came out, and I just started like researching up the wazoo about the whole non-GMO project was coming out around that time. So I started researching and pulled anything out of our cupboards that did not disclose their ingredients or had any sort of genetically modified object in there, got them out of the house. I got cleaning products out of the house that were not clean, that could have been wreaking havoc on, all of our lungs, our endocrine system, like all the things. I became crazy lady, like just purged our entire home, and then found a really awesome, just, whole food based protein shake that I could get into Braden. He loved it. He could keep it down. And I just kept doing that. I detoxed him with all sorts of different resources I had, got as much fermentation in his system as I could get. And finally, around week 7, he started to get his strength back, where he was starting to make a recovery. I remember I have pictures of him actually like holding on to our double bob stroller, like trying to regain his strength and learn to walk again, because he had been, down bedridden for about 7 weeks. And so the muscles and just the weakness that he had endured during that time, just to regain his strength. And praise the Lord, he ended up making a full recovery. And I honestly attested to Jesus saving him. Like, I think we had tools that we helped and navigated with him and helped regain his gut health, because I think it was all a gut health issue. And just gave him the tools he needed to regain his strength and heal his body internally, which, in fold gave him the strength to be able to start walking and heal his body. So that was the turning point for us, the week 3, and then around 7 weeks is when he started making that recovery. And then the doctor still at that point did not have a diagnosis. And they actually studied, our pediatrician was actually brilliant. He was a brilliant man. And I had a lot of respect for him. And he actually studied his case for about, I think it was about 3 years, might have been longer than 3 months. Yeah, it might have been almost 6 months actually. Studied his case, finally came down with a diagnosis that he thought based on all the data from Braden's case that he attested it to. And so he called us in his office and he said, I think I have a diagnosis for him. And now Braden's already healed. I mean, it was already, past tense, but it was still relevant because we never had an answer or any closure of what that was. And by that time, I was starting to connect pieces. I was starting to connect different things. I didn't think it was coincidence that he had just had his well check, and I started kind of doing my own homework, watching documentaries, reading books, and he came up with a diagnosis of enterovirus, to which I had never heard of before. And I said, "Well, what is enterovirus?" He said, "It's a strain of polio." And that's when the light bulb in my head went off. And I started connecting. I said, well, that's interesting because I know he had had his polio and his DTaP boosters for kinder. And so he looked me in the eye and said there was no correlation. And I fired him. I was like, you can't look me in the eye after what you've seen us go through. Again, I had a lot of respect for him until that moment. And so since then, we've just, really taken our health just by it with the best that we can and be our best health advocates. We work with a lot of different naturopaths and, different integrative doctors. And we've never, like Braden's never had any issues since. My middle used to have febrile seizures, so that's a whole different story. But I do believe to my core that Braden's journey was truly to protect his little sister, who was actually a NICU baby. So my littlest, Emmeline, she actually was born 6 weeks early, 34 weeks, and I had complete placenta previa. So she was trying to come out before, the placenta is trying to come out before the baby, and she came out with emergency C-section. And I do not think her body could have handled all of the stuff that my son had to deal with. So I believe it was to protect her.
Wow. Oh my gosh. There's so much in here, and no question that that was the purpose of his journey. I mean, my gosh. I can't imagine what that amount of toxins would have done to her little body.
Right.
So y the pediatrician diagnosed him with what is the term again?
Enterovirus.
Enterovirus. Okay, so
Mhm.
basically he had polio in his system.
Mhm.
And this was on the heels of receiving the polio vaccine. And he said there was no correlation.
Mhm.
Were
Yeah.
there
And then I shared that I had started watching documentaries, started reading books, and
were there any cases of polio in your area around that time?
no, of course not. No.
Just had to play devil's advocate there.
Of course. Yeah. And what's interesting is as soon as I started saying I started watching some documentaries and reading some books and doing my own due diligence, it was belittled. It was like, well, you should leave it to the doctors and the ones that have actually gone to medical school. And, these moms, at the time there was that movement starting with moms starting to question things. And it really ruffled his feathers because obviously they don't want to be questioned. And I think deep down he knew. I have no doubt that he knew, but can't say that out loud, right? He can't claim that.
There's things I want to come back to in Braden's story, but on the heels of that, they call it the practice of medicine. My dad was a dentist, my sister is a dentist. They call it a dental practice, uh, knowing that it is constantly evolving, just as science is constantly evolving anything else.
Mhm.
In your opinion, why do you think that there is such a hesitancy from your pediatrician and the community to accept that there are real adverse effects from vaccines?
I think it affects their livelihood. They lose their bonuses. Do not think a lot of people realize there are bonuses on the table when they have a percentage of their practice that is in that realm that are vaccinated.
I didn't learn about that until COVID came along, and we were very, very clear we were not going to get the COVID vaccine. Our children would not get it. Um, it was it was very cool to have my husband and I on the same page at that because I feel like we didn't ever really question anything about medicine, and it
Mhm.
wasn't like a topic in our house that we discussed a lot. But
Right.
for you know for that time and just awakening to what was happening and doing a lot of research and hearing a lot of stories. I'm very grateful we were on the same page for that. But yes, learning that doctors were incentivized to give vaccine. I knew about that one. I later learned it was a lot of vaccines. I don't know if it's all of them. Um, but it is unreal to me that that isn't a clear conflict of interest
Mhm.
when there is supposed to be informed consent. Now, why would you, if you have thousands, tens of thousands of dollars on the line, why would you give honest, informed consent to a patient that could cost you? I obviously, when I say why, that's I'm being facetious because I would think people still would, but it creates a disconnect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So going back to Braden's story, because I think, well, I know when I have shared things on social media that connect dots, I have had some direct messages from people who are highly triggered, um, even just making correlations to, there's a specific area in California that has had the most highly vaccinated kids, and it also has the most high rates of autism. And does one equal the other? No, correlation doesn't isn't causation. And should we be looking at that data more clearly? Is that worth taking a closer look at? Of course it is to me. But when I share things like that, I am amazed by how much people are triggered by and I received some messages from moms who have kids who are on the autism spectrum. And so I'm obviously it strikes a chord. And no parent, no mother wants to believe that anything that is happening to their child may have been prevented. Um, I I wish there weren't so much guilt or shame or anything because I feel like it's so distracting to finding solutions. But I think that that's happening with a lot of parents, and so I want it to be like very clear what was the process. So it started with his motor skills were affected. He wasn't able to get out of the car. That was really the first sign, right?
Yeah, it was like the whole room was spinning. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then from there, what other kind of symptoms did you see? Did it affect, well, you said it affected his eating. Did it affect his speech?
Yeah. His eating was affected because the room was kind of, it was like spinning. So everything, he was just very dizzy. So that made him not be able to keep food down unless he was completely laying down. And that's how we were able to keep. I mean, I have pictures of him. His friends would come over and visit, and he would be laying on the living room floor, with some pillows and stuff, and be able to be propped up just enough to have a little bit of a shake to keep, something in his system and get some protein in him. But yeah, he did not have the strength to like sit up and yeah, do any of that.
Mm,
So it was very debilitating.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know of, with many kids when they're babies or toddlers and they get a shot and they start to revert where they're starting to lose not just motor skills, but speech and, you know,
It did not happen, thankfully.
yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Okay.
skills.
Thank
Yeah.
God.
Thankfully. Yeah.
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 Okay. So during this time, uh, when you, well, first of all, when you said you would like to take him home, how was that received uh, at by doctors and the medical community?
That is actually a really, really awesome story. So I do not think they would have normally let a parent take them out of the hospital without being fully recovered, right? That's protocol and that's normal,
Mhm.
especially in this day and age. And this wasn't that long ago. So even in back then, 11 and a half years ago. However, because Emmeline was in the NICU, so we had gotten to know so many of the nurses there. It's a small town. So this is an hour from our home. It was the best hospital in the area. And it's a small town. You get to know people. And we had spent 3 weeks 24/7 in that hospital with the NICU, with the pediatric staff, all of them with Emmeline. And again, God in the details. Like, I think because we had had that the summer before, because Emmeline was born literally like a year before. So we were just going through, this was the next summer. So like the last summer we had Emmeline in the NICU, and then the next summer we've got Braden in there. So not much time had lapsed. So they had remembered us. And they even said, because they know our family and they know we will do everything we can at home, it was like a trust factor. They trusted us and let us take him home. Would that have been the norm if they didn't know us? Probably not. And I
Mhm.
think that would have been a whole different story and a whole different journey for Braden. And I honestly, that kind of haunts me thinking about, had we not had that exposure and those relationships and those friendships where they knew that we were going to take care of our child, I have no idea what would have happened.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Mhm. Before I move on from his story, are there certain pieces of his that part of the journey that you want to touch on?
For Braden's journey,
Yeah.
uh, not specifically on that. I think
Okay.
there's people will say, did you have signs or did you see like glimpses of any of this happening prior? And honestly, I feel ignorant that I hadn't seen or connected dots to any of this stuff, because our middle had had febrile seizures, and those started before she was a year old. And so if I had, it was almost like God was shaking me, like waking me up, trying to wake me up, but didn't wake me up with Elisa's journey. And then it took to put my kid bedridden for me to really wake up. And so while yes, there's a lot of guilt, and I think any mom that goes through this does feel guilt. So you were talking about like the triggers. It doesn't trigger me because we've healed. But it is a part of my journey that I honestly feel like if I could have done things differently, I would have loved to have spared my son that. But I also feel like it gave us the tools and has given us the journey and the story to be able to help so many other families since that, to be able to understand what's happening and be able to connect dots quicker. And to me, that's irreplaceable. So while yes, it was hard and it's something I would never ever want to rehash or wish on your worst enemy, it's given us the ability to see so much clearer of the agenda, what's happening to our children, what's being shoved down their throats, um, and if it's our journey that has to take this there, then I'm happy to be that lone soldier in it.
I think there's so many of us, myself for sure. My daughter went through, I think, got almost all of the recommended vaccinations, and it was my husband and I saw a documentary after that before our son was due to get uh, a lot of his. And so we made a different decision. And I'm, so grateful all the time that they didn't have adverse effects. But yeah, I think there's so many of us parents who look back and, when you know better, you do better, you would do things differently.
Mhm.
I think that's very widely shared. And so, um, it, and I think so many of us go in those doctor's appointments and you rely on the expertise. I mean, it almost feels well, I've had situations where it felt combative to even question,
Mhm.
which seems silly because you should be able to ask questions in an open environment and have communication. But I was shamed for asking questions at a pediatrician
Yeah.
appointment.
Yeah. I think most people are.
Hmm.
You're not supposed to question. You're not supposed to be watching documentaries and educating yourself, reading books.
So once you had the diagnosis for Braden and you had connected the dots, that this was without a doubt from his well check appointment and the shots that he got. What, how did that journey look like when you started sharing that experience with other people,
Oh
friends,
gosh, it
family?
started far between. Yeah. Finish what you were gonna say and yeah.
Yeah, just like friends, family, community, how was that received? Because I know even for me going through the COVID time, I had close friends, family, people were so split on how they felt about how everything was being handled. So I'm sure it was contentious in some situations.
Oh, absolutely. I had started because I had started piecing things together, and it was kind of like the nail in the coffin once the pediatrician gave us like the formal diagnosis. Um, I had started doing a lot of my own homework at this point prior, and we lost a lot of friends. We had family that did not agree or thought we were crazy. And it probably, I mean, I think people loved us and met us where we're at, but we were stripped literally of quote unquote good friends and judged and looked at as like the crazy lady. And I became very vocal about it on social media platforms and just really wanted to make waves so that it could help just that one mama on the other end be like, oh, like this is interesting. I'd like to dig deeper in this. I'm starting to see these connections and in their children. So that way they are informed and can get the resources they need to ask and protect their children. Um, and I think anti-vax actually gets a bad rap because it does trigger people. They hear that and they think you're crazy and you have all these potions and stuff. And I'm like, I don't use anti-vax. I use ex-vaxxer because I was at one point on board with it. And it wasn't until it like personally rocked my world. Then I started digging deep. The irony is that in 2020, most of the people that did shame us or didn't respect us or lost faith in us or whatever, they came back and they apologized and they said, I'm so sorry that I judged you or thought you were crazy. And I've been watching you quietly on the sidelines. And I actually now can lean into knowing that you were just trying to bring awareness, especially now knowing 2020 was where that was headed. Everybody, at least we saw the writing on the wall. Most people that were in tune with things saw the writing on the wall where it was headed and was going to be fast tracking that next vaccination. And so that to me was, I'm fine. I'm fine standing alone and being the lone soldier. I will do that to my grave to protect my children. And my husband and I are very much a team effort on that. And I don't think everyone has the uh, benefit of having a supportive husband in that or getting the team support in that. Sometimes that's even divided. So I'm grateful that we just linked arms and we were like, we're going to figure this out together. And it was by the grace of God, really leaning, being what I could lean in during that season and just helping those moms. And 2020 was kind of like an aha moment for many of the people that did absolutely
Wow.
cut us off, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. That's that was pretty big of them to come back and apologize and to say, and I don't want it to be about like you were right or anything like that, but just to acknowledge like, hey, you're trying to fight for truth and transparency and to help other people avoid going what you're going through. And I think that for me, that is the biggest frustration about stories like yours is the gaslighting that
Yes.
that families experiencing, that
Yeah.
experience like it didn't happen, or that your intuition or the ways that it laid out is somehow wrong.
Mhm. Right. And I don't think it's a matter of being right or wrong, just to kind of touch on that. I don't think to me, I could care less if I'm right or wrong. Give me the evidence to prove me otherwise. Like, I just want to make sure people are informed. And if they choose to still proceed and do the schedule for their children, more power to them. Like, that's like their individual choice. My heart breaks because I do not think it's a one size fits all. I mean, there's so many different correlations you could go and connect dots to because a lot of people think, well, my kids are fine. Like they've had the whole schedule and they're totally fine. As they've got ADD, as they've got ADHD, as they've got eczema, they've got, skin issues up the wazoo or whatever. And to me, it's like I wish people just be open to seeing a little bit deeper and looking at those diagnoses because my son, he had horrible eczema as a toddler, like really bad. And the doctors would keep giving him topical, things. And we know eczema is a gut issue. So if you
Mhm.
get to the root of all these issues, which obviously that the vaccinations all play a huge part of that. So my heart is really just to help inform and never to shame. And a lot of people I think would have been on the sidelines if they saw my journey going through it. They'd be like, why isn't she connecting the dots? They just had the well check and now they're in the hospital. But it took me to my knees to have to figure it out on my own. And that's, I think, why we all need to extend grace to parents and new moms that are trying to figure it out and might not connect the dots yet. And I do feel like I'm very grateful. I feel like since 2020, it's now not so taboo to talk about. and more people are questioning what's going on and having open conversations and looking into the data that pediatricians don't want you to look at. As soon as my pediatrician heard that I had learned about VAERS and MTHFR, his jaw about hit the floor. You're not supposed to know about that stuff.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, theirs is the vaccine adverse. What is the E? Uh, the acronym.
Adverse, um, I don't know what the E is. It's just the
Yeah,
adverse. It's the database that holds
right.
all of the adverse reactions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is my children are not on that because I did not know about it.
I
So you
was
think
just
of
gonna
all the,
say most aren't even reported because most people
they are
don't
not
connect the dots.
reported. Nope. Yep.
And
They
why
don't know
should we?
about it.
Because if the pediatricians aren't connecting the dots, how are
Yeah,
we expected to?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I read a statistic once, and I'm not gonna repeat what's in my head because I could very well get it wrong, but it is a very high percentage of the people who have vaccine adverse effects are not reporting it for that reason is usually the connection isn't connected, which is understandable.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember the percentage. I've read it and I'm sure it's changed
Mhm.
over
Mhm.
time, but it's a very small percentage that have actually been documented.
Right, right.
Mhm.
So with his healing journey, I want to talk more about that. So I love that you first of all got rid of all the toxic things in the house. I think more and more people I talk to, it's like slowly trying to just replace little things at a time. When this runs out, I'm gonna get this cleaner product because it's a lot. I mean, it can be
Overwhelming.
yeah,
Yeah.
very
Mhm.
overwhelming. And when you look at just what the ingredients and all of the average products, from food to cleansers to um, makeup to anything,
Yeah.
uh, it it's overwhelming at first. And so I remember having that conversation with Meg saying, just, start taking it one thing at a time. And by then I had swapped most things anyways, but I think that that's good advice. So, but with you, this was a drastic situation. So this was like an overhaul, tossing, replacing. So, what kinds of things were you bringing into the home that that were new?
I mean, I was starting to ferment foods, kombucha, kimchi, sauerkraut, all those good things for our gut. And then I started making my own products. So I had been using essential oils. I see this is the thing that I think is makes me scratch my head and wonder why did I not connect dots sooner? Because I was already, I thought, more proactive in having cleaner products, having a cleaner home, was using essential oils, had essential oils in our home. I think before even Braden was born, or right around the time Braden was born. So I started just making all my own products. I started making all of our detergents, cleaners, all the things, which will drive you mad because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. I also started homeschooling the kids, so that's a whole nother topic. But while I was doing that, it was just a lot to be able to juggle all of the homemade products that I was trying to do and also the homemade, food, whole food based. So a lot of detoxes, Epsom salt baths, all the things. So yeah, just doing the best I could to help detox them.
And what did you come across that had you make the connection to the gut health was really what you needed to be focusing on?
I don't know if it was immediately the gut health connection. I think it was just, I've got to get food in this kid. And because I had just started learning about the non-GMO project, that really bothered me, knowing that they could put genetically modified products or ingredients in their products. So that's where I started really digging deep. And then I knew I needed to just somehow help get nutrition in him, and in time started being more informed on like healing his gut is going to be the ticket to helping him make a full recovery.
Yeah,
So I don't think it was like a one, little glimpse. I think it was a bunch of just, you know mini aha moments for myself to connect it all.
sure. And how long was the span of time when you brought him home to his full recovery?
So he was in the hospital for 5 days, so almost a week, and it was around 7 weeks that he started making a full recovery. So about 6 weeks.
Oh.
Yeah.
What were they feeding him in the hospital?
Oh gosh, this will rock you. They gave him all the dyed popsicles, to which I tried to obviously not have him have as much. I would bring him in smoothies. So at the time, I was trying to bring him in smoothies to the best, as much as he could keep down. They also did have the IVs to help keep him hydrated as well. But yeah, just I don't think they ever gave him whole foods in the hospital. Like I don't think there were any. I'm pretty sure it was just mostly pops. It was like liquids because his tummy couldn't, I don't think it could have handled much more than that. So,
Okay. So
yeah.
usually it's like Jello or popsicle with food
It
dye.
was, he did actually have Jello. I do remember
Yeah.
Jello being in there, and I was like, oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's a whole other thing of the nutrition that's served in the hospital isn't nutritious at all.
No, yeah,
It's very
disturbing.
outdated.
Yeah.
My father-in-law was in the hospital for a heart attack, and I was looking at the menu or and the like take home of things he should be eating, things he should be avoiding. And canola oil was suggested on the things that he can be eating. Margarine. I mean, we're still promoting margarine, which is
Yeah,
like a
it's
molecule
unbelievable.
away from plastic. I mean, I don't, I, I just don't know how there's such a disconnect. And, my sister went to school for to be a functional nutritional therapist, and she specifically chose to not to go to school for to be a nutritionist because those are funded by the big food companies, and they learn different information.
Hmm.
And so that's what's guiding the menu in hospitals. And when we know that what we put into our bodies directly affects healing, it's just unbelievable to me that that's still the protocol.
Yeah, same. It shocks me when I hear that they're still serving that stuff, and they have to know. Like, you
Hmm.
can't be in 2025 and not know that at this point.
Right. I
So,
Yeah. I mean that would be willfully ignorant, and especially if you're in that field, if you're
exactly.
a
Yeah.
nutritionist.
Yes. Yeah. And
So
that just makes me sad when you think of the children and then just the parents. When you're in you have a child in the hospital, you're already, it's rocked your world. Obviously you're going a mile a minute trying to help support your child. So it'd be nice if that was taken care of properly, just to help those parents, help those children, get them real nutrition, get them real food to help them heal.
yeah, yeah. And did you have a pretty good understanding of health before? It sounds like it. I mean, you're bringing him smoothies, and you're even while he was in the hospital.
I was always passionate about it, but not as informed as I wish I had been back then. Um, I was chatting with a new friend recently, and they're trying to start their family, and she's leaps and bounds ahead of where I was at that point. And I said, man, I wish I had that wisdom going into starting my family and having the resources and being intentional, because I thought I was doing a good job, but clearly was missing the mark on many levels and was doing the best I could. But I think
Yeah,
that's another reason I'm grateful for our journey, because it's really allowed me to just be our best health advocate. We know our children better than anybody, and knowing how to best, facilitate that for them. I mean, my kids read labels, my kids within a couple years of this all happening, they'd be sitting at the store helping read labels and knowing like what to have and what was allowed in our house and what wasn't allowed. They would go to parties and get, the sugar cookies that would have the dyes on them. And I'd always tell them if they didn't want to have the stuff at the parties or the get-togethers, that I had the stuff at home and they could trade it out for that. Which was hard as a kid to say no, thank you at the school party or no, thank you at the birthday party. But they also knew how it made them feel. And I think him being 6 years old and my other being 4 years old, they both remember it. Like, I don't know if Elise remembers all the details, but I think she remembers her brother being sick and, like, it rocking her world because it was traumatizing. And so I think that was enough for them to be like, yeah, I'm okay with waiting and switching out my candy for the like Halloween. We used to do the what's it called? The ditch
twitch,
switch
twitch,
or switched it. What is it?
twitch, twitch.
Yes, we used to
Yeah,
do that, and
yeah,
they thought it was the coolest thing ever. And again, I let them make the choice. I wasn't going to just like pull it away from them, but I wanted them to make the choice and know what they were choosing to do rather than mommy just, doing it. So,
For sure. I think that that's one of the best ways we can empower the kids. There'll be mornings where they'll have a cinnamon rolls or something for breakfast, which is different from the normal, like, you know, protein fat with some carbs. And so we'll have a conversation, but I just like pay attention to how you feel hungry in like an hour, how you can
mhm.
feel like if when you don't have that stuff as often, that blood sugar spike, it's like you can feel it right away. So,
Absolutely.
as an adult, I like to have sweets every so often, but it's like I know what it's going to feel like, and so to just I had no awareness of that as a kid, like
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
kind of just that mindfulness I think is so important.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Um, okay, so as you were researching things as while you were healing Braden, what types of resources were you drawing from? I know you said that the non-GMO product.
Mhm.
Um, what else did you encounter that was helpful for you?
Del Bigtree. So with the high wire, there were also lots of books, lots of different documentaries. Um, I honestly geeked out on it. I went down a ton of different rabbit holes, and the more rabbit holes you go down, the more you're just like, oh my gosh, like this is a much bigger deal than we thought we were getting into, because then it unfolds tons of different um, lies, basically, that we realize as an adult that isn't accurate or hasn't been truthful throughout your upbringing. And um, I have a lot of respect for what's happening right now with RFK, and I feel like Del Bigtree, they did a great job, and he still has his show on the high wire. So that's a great resource, I feel like, for new moms to get in there and just use it as a tool. And there's tons of different resources alongside that. There's lots of, truthers out there, I feel like, on the social media platforms. Unfortunately, most of them do have a story. So a lot of them more recently that I love to follow are, unfortunately, they had injuries with the COVID vaccine. And so being able to just lean in and follow their resources, I feel like there's a ton at our fingertips that there wasn't when I first started. It was a little harder to find. Ashley Everly, I don't know if you are familiar with her, but she has a great resource. It's actually a whole binder of um, what is it called? It's basically everything at your fingertips to help you with making decisions and being informed on your health and wellness. So,
Okay,
yeah.
awesome. I just had on Kim Witzek recently, who calls herself an accidental advocate. And she lost her husband after he was prescribed Zoloft, and for insomnia. He had not had ever had anxiety or depression in his entire life. Went to the doctor for insomnia, was prescribed Zoloft, and not long later he took his life. And so she has gone deep into learning all about the pharmaceuticals and adverse effects, and it's a path that she had never intended on, and also one that she cannot sidestep because uh, once you are so deeply affected by something, it becomes such a passion to want to help others and warn them. So share a bit about your advocacy and what you feel called to do since Braden's journey.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely relate to that. I never saw this as being our path. I don't do this for, it's probably one of the hardest things sharing it in the online space. When I first started sharing it, I literally only shared it to reach that one mom that could have been me on the other end of it, ready to receive it and receive the information. And I think that's probably the most misconceived part of this entire movement, if you want to call it that, um, is people think it's just something we want to talk about, or, want to be on the ex-vaxxer or anti-vax movement and ruffling feathers over there for not it's wild to me when you sit back and think about it. When people, you'll have those, when you do a heartfelt post, when I share Braden's story, and you'll have that one person or probably multiple people that just pop their little head up and comment and be a keyboard warrior, shaming your story or saying it's not true. And my heart breaks for them more than it affects me at this point, because they're obviously not in a place to understand we're literally just being advocates for the next generation and future generations of children. My kids are healed. My kids are fine. My kids are thriving. I don't have to advocate at all if I didn't want to. My heart is for that next mom or soon to be mom or whoever is willing to just lean into the information we provide and help them go do their homework and encouraging them to do their due diligence and to know that there is a lot of data out there, especially now, 11 and a half years later, to go get your hands on and go do your own due diligence and get the resources so that you can make the best decision for your family. Because ultimately, it is medicine and it's not a one size fits all. When you're giving your child or yourself medication, it's based off of your height or your weight and your age. Like there's all these determining factors, whereas the vaccinations are not. It's a one size fits all, quote unquote, that they're giving every single child across the board. And think about all the different genetics each of these children have and how they could be like have an actual adverse reaction to it. Um, that's really where my heart is. And sharing it in the online space gets heavy. I shared it very heavy when we first were like in the trenches with it, like healing and really wanting to just share and reach that next mama. I've backed off a little bit since. I've backed off more of sharing his story the last few years. I'll share it here and there, but he's now 17 and thriving. And I want to respect his privacy. And he's okay with me doing these podcasts. I've asked his permission. And when I share his story on the, in the online space, but prior to posting it, I'll ask him if he's okay with that. And he's okay with it. And that's where, I just want to respect his privacy of knowing like if he's out in the community and people know his story and know his journey. And, it's his story, not my story to share. So.
Very cool. Amazing to hear that he's thriving.
Mhm.
What kind of activities does he into?
Oh, he's such a cool kid. He actually loves jujitsu still. He raises animals, so he's gotten very into like ranch life, farming,
Mm.
and he actually started his own company a year ago. It's been almost a year and a half, and kind of started it just kind of word of mouth, and it snowballed into this massive business. And he does all things farm and ranching, and still homeschooling. So he's almost done with his homeschool journey, but he'll always be a learner for life and just he's a very old soul. So my friends that know him and my our family that knows him, he's an old soul and he's got big goals, big life goals. So
So cool. So I wanted you to speak on homeschooling for a bit too, because I think most people who venture into that journey do so very intentionally. I know that the year that my kids were homeschooled, it was very intentional for to keep them out of the school system during the COVID madness. Um, and so, is it something that you always had planned on doing?
no.
Yeah.
No, I never wanted to be a homeschool mom. I always missed my kids fiercely after winter break, summer break, Easter break, fall break. Like I always missed them and I always hated sending them back, but I never wanted to be the homeschool mom. Never, thought I had it in me to do that. And it was Braden that actually was begging to be homeschooled. It was his third grade year. And as I shared when we opened up this podcast, he's just opened my eyes to so many things. And that was the next big one is how much time is wasted at school. I mean, what kids are doing in an 8-hour day can be done in a good 3, 4 hours tops of a school day, depending on what they're studying. And so I fought it for a long time. He started begging about January-ish, maybe end of January of his third grade year to be homeschooled, to which my husband at the time was a very successful partner at a CPA firm and was busy. He was gone 6 days a week. And I was just like, we were running a business from home and I didn't have the time and I didn't have the bandwidth. And Braden felt like it was his fault that I wasn't going to homeschool. I said, it's me. Like, I feel like I would fail you and I don't have it in me. I've got, we've got the dinners and the cleaning and the laundry and all the things on top of a business from home. And so he kept begging and begging and begging. And I kept saying no, pushing it off. And then finally one night when I was putting him to bed, he was in third grade and still same season. And he just was like, would you just consider it? Would you be open to it? Would you like let me try homeschooling? And I said, buddy, it is not you. It is me. Like, I honestly don't think I have the capacity to do it. I don't know even where we begin. And I know that I'm pretty sure I would fail you. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to, you have a great setup where you're at, blah, blah, blah. So then the next morning got up and he came to me with a list of 18 things on how he could help the dishes, the cleaning, the laundry, the cooking, like all these things. And I actually started to cry because I did not ask him to bring me a list of how he could help, you know, balance and juggle the home life for him to be able to have a homeschool opportunity. So he went to school that day. And I called a couple of my homeschool friends and I just said, Braden's been begging to homeschool. He's now got this list of how he can help us. And they said, Becca, he is screaming. He is screaming for you to homeschool him. He is bored out of his mind at school. And the teachers would give him busy work because it's all, the no kid left behind. So they give him busy work, which he didn't get credit for. And he'd come home and have 2, 3 hours of homework. And they wouldn't allow him to do the homework at school because it was a policy that you're not allowed to do at school, whatever. And so we decided on March 19th of that year to homeschool him. And he's been homeschooling ever since. And from day one, I was like, why did I not do this sooner? And it was really homeschool friends speaking into me saying, you don't have to be every single subject for him. My husband's great at math and all of that, and he can take that. We also have co ops, there's tons of resources to plug into. And it's also not a life decision. Like you could do it for the rest of the school year and then put him in the next year if you need to, if it's not a good fit. So it was really friends speaking in and giving me permission of why not just try it? You have nothing to lose. In my head, I thought, well, it's kind of weird to pull him out in March of his school year. Well, it's not because then he has a couple months to just kind of like detox. They call it school detox, like let him just kind of unwind and then kind of start your own routine a couple weeks late, after that. And honestly, from day one, it just felt so natural and it was amazing. And then my middle wanted to join. She asked us if she could start that following year. So she started literally a couple months later. And then my littlest, we had her in preschool and then we also put her in kinder just to spread her wings. And then she wanted to homeschool too. And I don't think she honestly knew. Like, I think she just wanted to be home with, brother and sister and have fun. So yeah, we've been doing it for, I think, like 10 years now. I think this is our 10th year and it's been amazing. So we kind of more unschool. So we're not your standard homeschooling and all of that, but it's been
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Everybody I talk to who homeschools their kids just light up just as you did speaking about it. And yeah, I mean I only got a year. My kids were in the schools, well, our oldest was in the school for 3 years plus preschool before that year. So she had the community at school and everything she was excited to go back to. And she likes that like structure of school. I'm not a structured person, so I think, she likes that. But I, yeah, I loved that time with them. I think the amount of creativity I saw in that year alone when they just had more downtime. I mean, my
Yeah.
daughter wrote a book. My son, he was young in kindergarten, but if he had not been homeschooled with me, he would have been doing all online learning that year of COVID, um, which would have been just super hard on our little 6-year-old. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I'm in awe of people who have figured out the homeschool because I think what you spoke to about when you were first considering it is all of the fears that come up for all of us. Like, how am I going to do this? It's enough to just keep up a household, do the dinners, the shopping, all the things. Um, and then for your son, what a love to come to you with a list of here's the ways I can help. Like, what an incredible kid.
Well, and one of the things he used against me too is he said, well, mom, you always, tell your team and coach on, doing what you love and using your time wisely. And living life out loud. And I was like, oh, he's like really listening to everything I do and coach. To which I couldn't ignore it, when I mean, he begged for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 weeks. I don't know the exact time frame he begged, but he begged for a long time. And to be able to use his time wisely and to be able to just try it, give him permission and give me permission to try something different and do hard things. And I know we can do hard things. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful that he begged and just gave me an opportunity to try it. And then since then, I've gone on all the rabbit holes of all of that's a whole nother conversation, but of the
Yeah,
corruption. Yeah, but it's been great. It's been an awesome journey. And I think he really does have a zest for life. And I honestly think that zest and old soul in him is because of what he's been through. And for that, I'm so grateful because he's not your normal 17-year-old, kid in 2025. Very he's just a very cool kid, like just does things very different. And yeah, it's been awesome to watch his journey unfold. And I'm so grateful that God healed him and has given him just the opportunity to use his life as an example. So
yeah, that's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be so cool when your kids get to that age. Mine are only 13 and 11. So just when you start to see how they are um, interacting with the world as like a professional, and you can see them becoming that adult version of themselves. So it's got to be pretty surreal and cool.
It's very surreal and it's very neat and it's very hard because my kids don't really need me anymore. My littlest still does, she's young enough still to need us, but my older, they don't really need mom and dad. And so, but it's such a sweet season now getting to see them step into what God created them to do and their passions and being able to just really, hit those hard and do what they love. So that's been cool.
That's awesome. You spoke to the coaching that you do. Uh, are you still coaching?
Yeah, so I actually help co-lead. We lead a large organization across North America and into Canada, and we just help people be able to create their own freedom and be able to do life differently. And I help educate on being able to ditch and switch your, household products. And that's, I think, my biggest passion with it is just really helping those families take the guesswork out of getting their house switched over because as I shared earlier, it's overwhelming. For me, when I first started, I think we had close to three big, huge trash bags full of stuff to get out of our house. And for the average family to try to even think about how to replace that's overwhelming. I used to make all of our products, to which now we use all of our products from the partner store that we're with, which is all American made and it's American made, American owned, which I'm very passionate about. So I love just being able to help educate people on being able to make those switches.
Yeah, I imagine as part of your advocacy, it's not just a warning of wanting parents to be empowered about what are potential hazards with vaccines, but also to really educate people as to healthy products that they can be using in their house and how that makes such a big difference in all around health. So um, that's a it's a is that a something that you've implemented since your experience, or it sounded like you had been doing that for a while, at least before he was homeschooled. So when did you get involved in this coaching?
So I started doing coaching around the time with Braden after he was healing and have just since it's just snowballed into more individual, households. I found a company that was in alignment with my values. And, prior to it being introduced to this company, I was making all the products. And so they helped take the guesswork out for me. So I didn't have to go and make the detergents and the soaps and all the things. And it's a one-stop shop. So it helps me be able to help families in a more simplistic way because I used to teach classes on how to do all of that, which takes time and it takes a ton of effort and tons of different ingredients to do as well. And it just makes sense to be able to have a one-stop shop to help direct people to and help them take the guesswork out of getting cleaner, greener, and it's actually super budget friendly. It's all the things you would be going to Target and Walmart for. So it's all made in Idaho, Idaho Falls. Yeah.
Nice, American made. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. super nice.
Talk a bit about the mentoring that you do in the services that you provide.
Yeah, so I help, women be able to, if they have desires or have, a financial burden, maybe it's to help alleviate the financial expenses or whatever for their spouse and be able to help them have a real solution to be able to create that income from home in the very small pockets that they might have in their day. For me, when I first started with our company, I was homeschooling the three kids all by myself. My husband was gone at the office 6 days a week. So being able to have a real vehicle that is dialed in, our company's been in business for over 40 years. And so being able to help families create their own freedom, whether it's a part-time income, a full-time income, it's really up to the individual and being able to mentor women to achieve that goal, especially families that want to homeschool or do life a little bit differently. Having a real vehicle to help them do that's what I love to do for other mamas.
Yeah, and imagine that it allows you to connect with a lot of stay-at-home moms or a lot of moms, people who are aligned in your values. And I know for me, working from home, I will seek out connection with women, because I'm not out in the world during the day a lot of times. I'm doing conversations through virtually or meeting with clients.
Mhm.
So yeah, those things are super important to just stay connected. And I feel like conversations can build in so many different ways when you have moms that are like-minded in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in this day and age, it's such an added, benefit for moms to be able to have that avenue.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. With all the things that you offer, the advocacy, the coaching, where can the audience find you and better connect with you?
So I'm mostly over on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. My Instagram handle is Be More Healthy. So it's B period more like our last name,
I
period
thought that
healthy.
was so creative, by the way.
That was actually all spun off of after Braden's whole thing. I was like, I need a cool handle that's like off of our last name. So
That's
yeah,
smart.
so that was evolved at that point. And then yeah, on Facebook as Becca Moore. So
Okay.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, we'll
yeah.
link
Thank
those
you.
below as well. But
Thank you so
I'd
much
like
for
to take
having
us
me.
out. Yes, thank you so much for carving this out. I know it's busy, but I think your story is so important, and the way that you speak to it and what you share is just amazing. And so I'm really grateful that you spoke with me today, and I'm really looking forward to releasing this.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you
Yeah,
for being persistent.
yeah.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah.